You have been surrounded by something exceptional, chosen one, and the effects are still being felt in the halls of awareness where truth is found. Ordinary souls bow under the weight of planned turmoil, and most individuals fall under pressure. But you have done something that has left observers in complete awe. Even you may not have completely understood your nature until now, but the way you handled what can only be defined as a concerted attack on your fundamental core has shown you something about yourself. They brought all they had to go after you. Fear is a weapon used by a number of factors working together to destroy your foundation and watch you crumble into the remains of who you used to be. This wasn't a haphazard argument or miscommunication that got out of hand. This was done with ruthlessness, calculation, and purpose. After analyzing your habits and determining your perceived weaknesses, they started an assault intended to cause such a great deal of confusion that your life would be reduced to unrecognizable rubble. Here's what they essentially misinterpreted about those who were selected, like you. They overlooked the fact that your power is not derived from external pressures, as they were formulating plans to eliminate you. The lack of conflict or other people's acceptance does not determine your authority. They were totally unprepared for what happened next, since they had never seen anything like what they saw when they attempted to pull you down in their experience with regular people. Their first round of attack was intended to incite panic, to get you to respond out of fear and desperation. To anybody who would listen, they wanted you to fumble and defend, explain, and justify your existence. They expected you to retaliate by following their guidelines, their tactics, and their state of awareness. In order to match their energy and demonstrate their belief that everyone ultimately displays their nasty nature when pushed hard enough, they anticipated you to fall into the same destructive patterns from which they function. They had a very personal and advanced arsenal. They turned your confidences into weapons for character assassination by using the secrets you had divulged while you were weak. These assaults by strangers weren't arbitrary. These were deliberate betrayals by people who had access to your inner world and decided to take advantage of that precious trust. They knew just which vulnerabilities to surgically target, which worries to exacerbate, and which pressure points would inflict the most harm. They planned a campaign that was intended to completely flip the narrative, portraying you as the aggressor and themselves as the victims. They created intricate tales in which your generosity turned into deceit, your limits become brutality, and your success into stealing from more worthy people. This was no casual slander or rumor. This was advanced psychological warfare designed to radically alter the narrative of your identity in the eyes of everyone who knows you. Their tactic was especially sneaky since they took advantage of your already sympathetic disposition. They were aware of your natural tendency to attempt to see things from their point of view, to consider the possibility that you may have unintentionally hurt them, and to show grace even to those who were deliberately trying to damage you. They relied on your empathy, turning into a weapon in their hands, and your readiness to accept blame, turning into proof of guilt in their perverted story. As an alternative, something extraordinary occurred that still has an impact on everyone who saw it. To those watching, you displayed a level of poise that was almost otherworldly. You remained focused despite the storms raging all around you, the accusations flying, and the stories being distorted beyond recognition. This spoke to something far more profound than simple self-control. It wasn't you clenching your jaw and trying to keep your cool. This allowed you to tap into a source of genuine power that is immune to outside influence. You made a decision that would shape everything that came after at those crucial times when it seemed like everything was collapsing, when the noise was overwhelming, when the strain was too much to bear. You went within rather to face the battleground they had set up for you. As they raged, planned, and conspired to destroy you, you took refuge in the furthest recesses of your own mind and rekindled that unquenchable fire that no storm outside can put out. This introspection was neither a defeat nor a retreat. You could not have made a more potent strategic move. You discovered reservoirs of power that even shocked you, and you found the answers they were attempting to keep you from reaching in the stillness of your own soul. Drawing from a reservoir of knowledge that had been waiting for this precise time, to become apparent. As they pressed harder, you sank deeper and deeper until you hit bedrock, that solid base of divine love that is the essence of every chosen person. By harmonizing with cosmic currents that function outside their comprehension of power and influence, you were really attracting spiritual energies that they were unable to even detect, which they mistook for retreat. You were constructing interior defenses that would be totally impervious to their assaults while they were devoting themselves to outward fights. Everyone watching could see your actual character more plainly the more pressure they put on you. You seemed to become more rooted, more in line, and more linked to something unbreakable inside yourself, while they became more frantic and insane in their efforts to elicit a response. In the face of coordinated darkness, those who anticipated seeing you crumble under duress saw what occurs when a chosen one truly embraces their spiritual power. It was difficult to overlook the contrast. With every unsuccessful effort to shatter you, their energy became more chaotic and destructive. As your presence became more radiant and serene, onlookers started to see trends that exposed the actual nature of the situation. They saw how your accusers' accounts were constantly shifting, how their proof was inconsistent, and how their emotional outbursts were out of proportion to the complaints they made. In the meanwhile, you continued to be dependable, the same person in public as in private, with the same principles shown by deeds as by words. The witnesses were profoundly awoken by this striking variation in energy signatures. Individuals who had never thought of themselves as spiritual started to realize that they were seeing a conflict between essentially disparate awareness operating systems. Those motivated by ego, fear, and the urge to manipulate outside events in order to feel safe were on one side. On the other side was a person who had found solace in something far more dependable. Their link to spiritual truth, which is beyond the realm of human control. The keenest onlookers saw that they were watching a spiritual resilience masterclass. You weren't weak if you didn't combat fire with fire. It was proof of gaining access to a whole new kind of power. You showed what abundant awareness looks like when it's really lived rather than only grasped academically, while your assailants were acting from scarcity consciousness, always having to denigrate others in order to feel better themselves. Every assault they made, every effort to obscure your light, every tactic intended to ruin your connections and reputation started to show their own shadows more clearly. As their masks fell off and their genuine objectives became apparent, the same people who had come to see your alleged collapse became close watchers of their own character assassination. This campaign's planners had made a crucial error in their understanding of the nature of spiritual energy. They thought that anybody might be overcome by negative force applied with sufficient coordination and intensity, that even the strongest person would collapse if enough pressure was given to the appropriate spots. Instead, they found that assaults do not weaken those who work from real spiritual connection. They establish a purifying procedure that exposes the unbreakable core below and burns away anything that isn't real. As their campaign became more intense, an intriguing development emerged that went against their conception of the nature of power. Each falsehood they stated about you seems to shed light on how they relate to the truth. Each effort at manipulation revealed more about their own nature. Each act of brutality they committed revealed the lack of true strength inside their own base. There was no denying the spiritual mathematics. Light triumphs over darkness. It can only become more apparent when contrasted with its opposite. Those who had first been unbiased observers were appalled by their growing desperation. People saw in real time as people who had before seemed rational and trustworthy started to display actions that exposed a very unsettling aspect of their actual character. There was no slow slipping of the mask. Witnessing it was spectacular, indisputable, and quite unnerving. Those who had been brought in to see your demise began to whisper. These individuals, who were first enlisted to support their tale about your alleged shortcomings, started to see trends that revealed an entirely different picture. They saw your accusers' growing instability, desperation, and willingness to use more harmful techniques when their first approaches did not provide the expected outcomes. What they saw was the full disclosure of the darkness that had been planning this whole operation, not the exposing of your concealed darkness. Something significant changed in everyone's comprehension of these dynamics as the days stretched into weeks and the assaults persisted. Your persistent reluctance to interact with them on an equal footing. Your steadfast dedication to doing honorably in spite of the repercussions. It became hard to overlook the strong contrast established by your apparent unwillingness to get drawn into their dramatic storylines. The distinction between those acting authentically and those engaging in complex manipulations became very clear to everyone. Witnesses gradually but irrevocably began to awaken. Your accusers' early supporters started to see contradictions in their accounts. The manner in which specifics varied according on the audience. How calculated emotional appeals were used instead of coming from real grief. In the meanwhile, your tale didn't change. Not because you were meticulously manipulating a story, but because truth doesn't need to be maintained as much as deceit does. A pivotal moment occurred when a number of people who had been brought in to support the campaign against you started to share their personal insights. You weren't being defended by these people. These were those who had at first accepted the charges, but had become uneasy with what they were seeing. They had no obvious reason to protect you. Therefore, their testimony was especially credible. All they were doing was reacting to their own conscience and their own visual facts. These courageous individuals started talking about the coercion they had experienced to join the campaign, the deception used to get their assistance, and the assurances your accusers had given and subsequently betrayed. As more people had the guts to come forward with their own stories of being coerced, or recruited to join the attempt to ruin you, their discoveries had a cascading effect. The exact network that had been put up to bring you down turned out to be the truth-seeking tool that revealed the whole thing. There was no denying the spiritual mathematics of this scenario. It seemed like every bit of bad energy they threw at you became amplified and came back to them with compound interest. Their own poisonous decisions started to cause their relationships, reputations, and sense of self to fall apart. What they meant as your public execution turned into their own exposure as people prepared to compromise compassion, truth, and fundamental human decency in order to further their own egos and covert agendas. What happened to them wasn't the most amazing part of the whole trip, however. It was what transpired within of you during this period of severe spiritual trial. You were exploring your own awareness and finding stores of power and knowledge that even shocked you, while they were wasting their energy in fruitless efforts to shatter your spirit. Every assault turned into a call to deepen your connection to your inner power, let go of your need on approval from others, and develop the type of unwavering presence that is indicative of spiritual maturity. You discovered skills that had been dormant, awaiting the ideal circumstances throughout this testing phase. Your spiritual abilities grew rapidly under hardship, much like a muscle that becomes stronger when it is strained. Your ability to discern the underlying motives of every word and deed sharpened your intuition. You were able to control your emotions to an almost superhuman degree for those who saw. You showed expertise that usually takes ages to develop, the ability to contain chaos without being overwhelmed by it. It wasn't merely an internal change. Everyone in your area of influence was impacted by the ways it spread outward. People started to gravitate toward your vibe because they were in dire need of something they couldn't quite put into words. Others said it gave them exceptional insight about their own life circumstances, while others said it made them feel safer in your company. The calming power of someone who has discovered their core in the middle of complete pandemonium was what they were experiencing. During this hardship, your everyday life evolved into a kind of spiritual exercise that would have tested the mettle of even the most seasoned searchers. You had to choose patience over response, truth over convenience, and love over fear in every encounter. Every discussion turned into a chance to show what happens when someone acts according to heavenly principles instead of their own ego. These innumerable little decisions added together to create an indestructible spiritual character that today acts as a lighthouse for those battling their own inner demons. Your assailants didn't realize that they were helping you graduate spiritually into a higher state of awareness by applying such tremendous pressure. Anything within of you that wasn't really in line with your best self was burned away by every effort to dull your light. Their attack turned into your spiritual accelerator, condensing what might have been years of steady development into a moment of intense, quick change. Take a time to think about it. I have a very significant matter that requires your attention. Through this weekly Zoom call, we're sharing what we know about personal power, healing oneself, and healing others. No holding back, no filters. All of the esoteric secrets we have accumulated during actual years of spiritual practice have been subtly included. Those who are willing to follow the same route may now access the methods and knowledge that helped us go from controlled porn to conscious artists. Please accept this offer to become a member of Obsidian Inner Order and help us expand our platform so that we can reach more selected individuals who are awaiting activation. Joining the Obsidian Inner Order gives you access to more than simply information that is prohibited. You're joining a movement that is changing the very fabric of reality. All of us benefit from it. The description contains a link. Witnesses to this metamorphosis describe it as seeing someone step into their full spiritual power and peel apart layers of illusion in front of their eyes. The person who went through this experience was not the same person who came out of it. Ironically, however, you became more of who you were than you had ever been. Every effort to denigrate you appeared to unveil new facets of your personality that really enlightened onlookers about the potential of people when they are in harmony with their best selves. Your quiet was not that of someone who had been battered into submission. It was the quiet of someone who understood that confronting toxins head-on would mean compromising all of your values. Your unwillingness to use traditional means of self-defense revealed a great deal about your connection with truth and your faith in the supreme justice that rules spiritual reality. You were clearly functioning from a completely different paradigm of awareness because of your degree of confidence in cosmic order and your readiness to let truth come to light via your example, rather than your arguments. No amount of vocal defense could have accomplished what this calculated quiet did. Your accusers felt obliged to fill the void it left by acting in a more open and desperate manner. Without your responses to divert attention from their own behavior, everyone's attention was drawn to their actual character. Your inaction produced a vacuum that turned into a mirror reflecting their techniques, objectives, and character with crystal clarity. People started to realize that you weren't being passive by being silent. The most proactive decision you could have taken was that one. Your readiness to just live in your truth without requiring validation from others was revolutionary in a culture where everyone feels obliged to defend, explain, and justify every action. This revealed a degree of spiritual assurance that most people have never experienced, much less lived out. Your silence had a powerful effect on every relationship and circumstance it touched. Suddenly, many who had been enmeshed in the drama began to wonder why they felt compelled to choose a side and why they were so involved in other people's problems. People started to realize how much of their own energy they had been unwittingly sacrificing to pointless conflicts and skirmishes after you set an example of non-engagement. Your quiet started to speak more than words as the weeks went by. It conveyed inner tranquility, power, knowledge, and an unwavering devotion to truth that didn't need confirmation from others. People began to see that they were surrounded by someone who had found something that most people look for their whole lives: the capacity to stay grounded in their own truth in the face of turmoil outside. Everyone involved could see the full extent of what had happened as the dust cleared. Having seen firsthand the difference between someone acting from genuine spiritual power and someone motivated by ego-based machinations, people who had come expecting to see your collapse instead became your most ardent supporters. Your former assailants were left alone, their reputation ruined by their own decisions, and their strategies failed so badly that they were subjected to the same social and personal devastation they had planned for you. Because they were formed in the furnace of mutual truth and character identification, The relationships that made it through this testing were immensely stronger. New relationships were made with people who had seen your poise under duress and saw in you something they want to have more of in their own life. People were drawn to your energy because you had shown them what it looked like to stay connected to love while being surrounded by its antithesis, not because you had proved yourself in combat. Those who had been nearest to the attack's core, however, underwent arguably the most striking change. A deep disappointment that radically changed their perception of human nature overcame those who had seen both the public campaign and the covert planning that went into it. Some had been your accusers' true friends, thinking they were standing by someone who had been harmed. Others had been enlisted by appealing to their sense of justice or concern for the defense of the weak. These people experienced severe and long-lasting shock when they realized the real nature of what they had been taking part in. Someone else had unintentionally used them as weapons. Their noble intentions were used to support falsehoods. Being duped was just one aspect of the betrayal they experienced. It was about being forced to participate in something that went against their own morals and principles. These reawakened comrades turned into some of your fiercest guardians. They had to defend the truth after being coerced into endorsing lies for their own recovery, not because you asked them to. Their fervent support had special weight as it came from those who had seen both sides, were familiar with the inner tricks of manipulation, and could authoritatively discuss the distinctions between your character and that of your accusers. Your assailants could not have predicted the phenomena they generated as they changed from unconscious players to aware champions. They had unintentionally brought together a group of individuals who had firsthand knowledge of separating truth from propaganda, rather than assembling a mob to kill you. This society developed into a strong force for justice that functioned with a moral authority that can only be attained by being put to the test and proved in the furnace of tough decisions. This crucible produced a version of yourself that functions with such profound spiritual assurance that circumstances no longer have the ability to dictate your reality. Your pre-existing worries have been transformed into knowledge as a result of this encounter. An unwavering sense of your own value that doesn't need outside validation has replaced a desire for acceptance that may have left you open to manipulation. This change was more than simply a personal one. You were getting ready for something far bigger. The fortitude you acquired throughout this ordeal, the understanding of human nature you acquired, and the unwavering trust you fostered in divine justice were not only gifts for your own path. They were training you to be an example for those who would encounter similar difficulties, to demonstrate that love can endure in the face of hostility, that peace can exist in the midst of turmoil, and that truth can prevail in a world full of lies. People started to realize that your story was about more than simply overcoming personal hardship. When human awareness is at its peak, you have become a live example of what it can do. Anyone going through their own spiritual difficulties and tribulations may use your trek through this darkness and your eventual emergence as a beacon of light. The repercussions went much beyond your close social group. Stories about how you handled this scenario started to circulate, encouraging people to reflect on how they respond to conflict and what it may look like to act with the same integrity in the face of difficulties. Your example served as a benchmark for what may happen when someone prioritizes long-term character above fleeting gains and spiritual values over short-term advantages. Something that had been dormant in the collective awareness of all those who saw your metamorphosis was awakened. People started to reflect on their purpose for being here, their desired influence, and their desired legacy. Others were reminded of their own divine nature and their ability to act from love rather than fear, truth rather than convenience, and wisdom rather than reaction by your display of unwavering spiritual power. You may never completely understand how your handling of this circumstance continues to have an impact on lives and change perceptions. Those who saw your journey through this darkness have been motivated to reflect on how they handle conflict and what it could be like to act with the same integrity when confronted with their own difficulties. Your example has come to symbolize what may happen when someone chooses truth over expediency, love over fear, and spiritual values over short-term gain. Unknowingly, the people who planned this campaign against you gave you the precise training your soul required to advance to the next stage of spiritual mastery. You were laying the inner foundations that will last the rest of your life, while others were burning their bridges and ruining their own reputation. The fortitude you found in this adversity, the understanding you acquired of your own nature, and the unwavering adherence to divine protection you now possess. No outside power can ever take away these benefits from you. I stand here today in the wake of what was supposed to be your demise. You are a symbol of hope for everyone who has ever faced overwhelming odds. Fighting fire with fire or demonstrating your superiority over your opponents did not bring you success. You prevail because you stayed so firmly grounded in your own self that nothing outside of you could pull you away. And in doing so, you exposed the helplessness of those who rely on control and manipulation. Under duress, the selected ones among us exhibit a certain periodicity. And throughout this study, they saw that frequency working at full capacity in you. Your ability to turn poison into medicine, your unwavering spirit, and your resolve to let life break you. These characteristics identify you as someone who came here to show what human awareness can do when it is in its fullest state. Everyone who saw you handle this situation so gracefully now has a broader perspective on what is possible when they confront their own inner demons. An assault on your reputation and character is not something you just survived. You demonstrated to the audience what happens when a chosen person acts from the unwavering basis of divine love and completely embraces their spiritual power. The silence that once shielded you has changed into a voice that speaks truth through your very presence, encouraging others to find their own inner strength and serving as a reminder that no outside force can weaken a soul that is aware of its own divine nature, no matter what storms may rage around them. The world is changed in this way by those who are selected, by possessing such genuine spiritual force that everyone who meets them is uplifted by the experience, rather than by extravagant gestures or public campaigns. The cosmos changed from what they intended to be evil to your greatest growth-promoting agent. And now you are a live example of how love always wins out over fear when someone has the guts to fully embody it, regardless of the immediate cost.